folks, thanks for checking into the Neutral Zone Hotel. We're an unapologetically left-leaning podcast that explores hockey at its best and worst, and oh boy, do we ever have both ends of the spectrum this week. This is Benjamin, and my pronouns are he, him. I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan living in the beautiful city of Ottawa, Ontario, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the Neutral Zone Hotel. With me today are a couple of my colleagues. SJ?
Hi, I'm SJ. I am a Seattle Kraken fan living in the beautiful city of Seattle, and my pronouns are they and them.
And I've also got Alex with me.
Hi, name's Alex. Pronouns are she, her, fan of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
We're just going to get to the, I don't want to call it the biggest news of the past week. This is a week that's had the NHL Draft, NHL Awards, and the craziest free agent frenzy in NHL history.
Or at least 8 years.
It's been wild, that's for sure. Except for the Minnesota, even Minnesota went wild. But what we want to start off with is a pretty in-depth discussion about the NHL reinstating Stan Bowman, Al MacInnis, and Joel Quenneville. I'm sure everybody knows, but just to make sure we are all on the same page, all three of these executives, coaches, were ruled ineligible to work in the NHL by Gary Bettman following the Chicago Blackhawks, the investigation into the Chicago Blackhawks sexual assault cover-up that occurred during the 2010 Stanley Cup run that successfully brought a cup to Chicago. Most specifically, it keys on former video coach Brad Aldrich, who sexually assaulted Kyle Beach, who was one of the team's Black Aces. They covered this up, and then after they let him go, but Quenneville then wrote a letter of recommendation for Aldrich, where allowing him to get a job at a high school where he assaulted another individual. Aldrich has since been, disgraced. His name was removed from the cup, and as part of the consequences, the Hawks were ordered to pay $2 million, which is not much, and Bowman, Quenneville, and MacInnis, who were part of a meeting where they openly discussed what was going on and agreed not to do anything, they were ordered to be removed from the NHL. Ever since then, especially Joel Quenneville, who, to his credit, one of the most successful coaches in NHL history, teams have floated the names pretty much every time a coach has been fired and every offseason. And now they are available to be hired starting on July 10th. I don't think there's any doubt why the NHL dropped this news at 5 or 4 o'clock on Canada Day, which was also the free agent frenzy. And I don't think there's any doubt that they're going to get jobs. Stan Bowman has already been rumored to be targeted for the open GM position. The likelihood that Joel Quenneville immediately jumps back into the employed ranks is low. Columbus is the only open head coaching position, but Aaron Portzline has reported that they intend to fill the vacancy before the 10th. So I think that's a pretty quick level set. I think we should just go around the room and maybe share some thoughts, feelings. I know this one caught me by surprise. I knew it would come one day. I didn't think it was going to come so soon. I was watching Free Agent Frenzy at the time with a panel led by Craig Button, with Cheryl Pounder, Mike Johnson, and Frankie Corando on it. And everybody except for Button seemed pretty taken aback. So it's clear that the media, at least at that case, was not expecting it either. I don't know who wants to go next. Nobody.
I mean, it's so, I don't know. It's something that, as you said, was coming eventually, but it's kind of a surprise that it had happened now. We kind of, Strickland, who has been the mouthpiece for a lot of the hot air balloon attempts on previous possible returns by Quenneville in particular, had tweeted that the league was looking at reinstatement, in particular around Bowman being hired by the Oilers. But I wasn't sure how real that was until it happened. And it It sucks. It's unfortunate. It's the frustrating thing about the NHL is that a large portion of the people in power in it have trouble or do not see why this incident was a problem, why people made a deal out of it, why people are rightfully continuing to make a deal out of it. They just see it as a distraction. And that is the wall that so many of us who want to love this sport are running up against. And this is another brick in that wall. It's one that's not surprising, it's not shocking, but it still hurts to run into it.
The thing that I kept hearing from certain media, from a lot of hockey fans, over and over in the lead up to this was that they didn't understand why they hadn't been reinstated yet because they had, quote, done their time, unquote. They thought in their minds 3 years, has it been 3 years?
2.5 years.
2.5
2.5 years of living very comfortably in a sort of retirement bliss, as these are old, very rich men. So 2.5 years of living very comfortably and having, every coach and GM in the league call to chat with them whenever they like, and, getting to go to the coach meetings and the GM meetings to give little talks and hobnob. They thought, well, that's punishment enough. They haven't had an NHL job in like 2.5 years. They've been punished. And it just makes me so mad. Just like incandescent rage. That is what they think this is worth. Like what they did was worth.
For the 200 hockey men being forced to be away from high-level hockey is the greatest punishment they can think of, which I think says a lot about the privilege levels of the 200 hockey men.
I'm not going to disagree, but I will say that is something that is not unique to hockey. That's something we see at the very least across high-level sports. I know this because I am a fan of, for example, college football, which has so many parallels in scandals to what we're going through with hockey right now. These guys who have covered up, who have overseen, do not want to stay away because they have the brain worms that they have to be the guys coaching. They have to be the guys managing a team. And other people have those same brain worms that say, hey, you had success once. I want you to have success for me again. Who cares about all that other stuff? That's not a unique to hockey problem. It will never be a unique to hockey problem. And it's not a easy problem to deal with when you're someone with minimal amounts of power.
I think it's true of anybody in a level of power. I mean, you made the point about college football, and I seem to recall there were some challenges around Penn State accepting their discipline after their sexual assault scandal.
Penn State, yeah, definitely. Part of that is, I'm going to get in the weeds here, a legal issue where the NCAA legally did not have the ability to issue the penalties that it did because it was criminal penalties that should have been issued, and the NCAA doesn't have that authority, which way too in the weeds. It's just a problem.
Yeah, but I mean, also from a cultural perspective,
Oh, yeah.
I seem to recall there were a lot of administrators and stuff who kind of treated it like it was no big deal, which is very similar to what we see now.
Yep.
I also think of politics.
Yep.
I think of people like Anthony Weiner trying again and again to come back after just constantly getting caught literally with his dick out. Any sort of privileged power, we see this. And another thing that I think we've heard a lot of, and that TSN panel, Craig Button, who is one of the 200 hockey men, I think pretty firmly, and was surrounded by three people who are not, in Pounder, Carando, and Mike Johnson. He was immediately saying, well, they've done the work. They've done the work. Quite loudly and forcefully. And I don't, we went back, we go way back on this podcast. We talked about Logan Mailloux, and my opinion is that for a young man who's made a mistake, there should be a path by which they can figure themselves out and go back to the one thing they've trained on doing professionally. I'm not against forgiveness, and I'm not even against the concept that people who have done and covered up this sort of crime can return to the game they love. But I believe the bar needs to be set appropriately high. This was not a mistake in the heat of a moment. They sat down, they talked this out, they had a meeting where they talked about what was happening, and then they deliberately covered it up. That is a significant, high level of understanding and responsibility. It was a conscious choice to put a silver bowl ahead of a human being's integrity and respect and their self-image and all the terrible things that get destroyed when somebody does this to you. And then they help that guy do it again. Let's be clear.
Yep.
So if you want to say you did the work, I want to see what that work is. I want to see what that means so that as a consumer of the product, I can determine if I think the work that was done and was required meets any level of bar. And of course, we're not hearing any of that. Yep.
Yeah, mostly when anybody asks, they seem to get annoyed that they would be questioned.
Yep.
How dare you?
We've seen...
Ask for proof.
Yeah, we've seen... There's been very little talk about it. We've seen Quenneville talk about it a couple of times when his name has been floated. And especially as the conversation goes on longer, the answers that he gives get more and more unacceptable. Yeah.
Terse. Yeah, he gets angrier and angrier about it.
Which really, we don't know. Bowman and McInnes haven't given public statements about it. But Quenneville certainly seems to haven't internalized why what he did was wrong and why people are mad at him and why he has suffered the slightest of consequences.
And it has been a very slight consequence in the grand scheme of things.
So he appeared on the Cam and Strick podcast, which covers the Blues. Quenneville has a long history with the Blues, being tied to it. That's where he started coaching, for example. And I think it's really notable that he started off with a statement that was fairly accurate in that saying, like, I blame myself for some things I could have done and should have done differently. I didn't put it all together, he says. Okay, I take ownership on that. I think if I'd known more, I would have handled it differently. But they came back to it later on. He got mad at them and said, it was a miss. It was a miss. And that's hockey talk.
Yes.
Right? That's, I missed. I drafted a guy wrong, or I didn't give this guy the opportunity he should have gotten on the ice. That concerns me, because if there was an honest and deep reflection on what had happened, he would understand. The first thing is that every time Joel Quenneville gets mentioned by anybody, media, in his Wikipedia page, they write a book about this Blackhawks team down the road, wherever it comes from, he's going to be irrevocably linked to his failure to support Kyle Beach. And he needs to understand he deserves that. And until you accept that that's part of what you're going to do for the rest of your life, you can't come back from it. You have to be patient. You have to reflect on it honestly. And no other work matters until you can do that.
Yeah.
I do have something I want to talk about, which is that, of course, it's the Oilers that is bringing back Bowman, and this is twofold. The first is that over the past couple of years, the Oilers have been the team that has been most aggressively giving out, and putting air quotes around this, second chances. They're not the only team that does this, but they've been the most high-profile case. Corey Perry this year, Evander Kane a few years ago. We talked about it a bit when we talked about Britta Curl, which is that players like this, players with red flags off the ice, allow you the chance to get a competitive advantage if you're willing to deal with them and it works out. And for the Oilers, it has mostly worked out. There's other aspects to that as well, which is that the upper management, a guy like Paul Coffey being as part of the coaching staff and an advisor to the owner, he is an incredibly accomplished hockey player and also has some absolutely terrible things that he has said that you do not want brought up, or that he would really prefer be forgotten if he thinks about them at all. Their owner, while never the subject of any criminal complaints, has also been up to some janky stuff. I believe, was it underage prostitution that he was?
Yeah, either underage prostitution or trafficking underage people for the purposes of sexual activity.
Not something that was part of a criminal complaint filed against him, but something that came up in a completely unrelated lawsuit that it just happened to become public as part of one of the depositions. So definitely some reason to think that the leadership group of this franchise is a very 200 hockey men leadership group. They do not see the problem.
I think the Oilers have been in this position of absolute desperation. Like they're the stench of desperation, not just like normal desperation, but it's been stinky up there in Edmonton, and it's been that way for a long time. And the total lack of moral fiber at the absolute top of that organization, it just kind of floats down to every little tiny decision that they make.
The other thing, which is because I don't want to harp too much on that. The other thing is that Bowman perfectly matches the pattern of GMs that the Oilers have hired this decade. They really like guys who won cups and then got chased out of their previous team because immediately after winning cups, they led a managed decline, which is to say that they tried to be competitive, but they signed the wrong guys to long-term deals. They made poor trades, poor asset management, and they left their team in a not great place when they left. This is Chiarelli. This is Ken Holland in Detroit. And this was what Stan Bowman looked like at the end of his tenure in Chicago, where he was a guy already on the way out because he had made so many bad long-term moves that left the Blackhawks in an even deeper hole than they otherwise should have been post the end of the Toews Kane era, as it were.
The last 4 Stanley Cups have been won by young GMs with an analytical bent. And I don't think that's entirely coincidental.
So this is just to say that in addition to it being a morally reprehensible hire to hire Stan Bowman right now, or at all,
if they go through with it, which
yes,
they probably will, but it hasn't been announced yet.
It would also be a bad hire.
Yeah, Bowman stinks. He's a bad GM. It's baffling on so many levels.
It's not baffling if you view it through the lens of the 200 hockey men and what they value and what they think is good.
I just can't bring myself to look through that lens. It makes me feel gross.
Stan Bowman won 3 Stanley Cups. There's not many GMs out there who have 3 Stanley Cups. Also, this doesn't hurt. Stan Bowman's dad was the greatest head coach of all time. Also, he kind of got a bad rap, didn't he? I mean, it's not really his fault that some guy did a bad thing. And he spent 2.5 years in the wilderness, by which we mean at his expensive cottage in Muskoka. That's the wilderness. And he did the work, whatever that means. No one's saying.
I heard he did the work. I heard it from somebody I trust.
I saw it on TSN. Craig Button said it, so it must be true.
That's right. Mike Babcock texted it to me.
Oh, well, no. Mike Babcock saw it on somebody else's phone. Put it up on the big screen for me to see. The good news is that Stan Bowman hasn't been hired yet. So if you're an Edmonton Oilers fan,
especially if you're a season ticket holder,
hit up their socials and say, we don't want to see a guy like Stan Bowman. Find a better option. If you're a ticket holder, season ticket holder, call your ticket rep and tell them, this is going to impact my ability to enjoy this team. I may consider not renewing if you guys can hire Stan Bowman. I cannot trust him to run a team, especially a team that's got a known shithead like Paul Coffey behind the bench, right? Like, we don't know what they're going to let him get away with. It sounds like Evander Kane is probably done. He's on LTIR. And we don't know what Corey Perry really did in the Blackhawks org. But we do know that Paul Coffey was a racist piece of shit and got suspended for it years ago. And by all accounts, is still up to no good. So how do you trust a guy to run an org with people like that? I don't know. Say something. Because the only way these guys are going to be let back in the league is if ownership and management believes that the outrage in the community is not major. And we've seen this before. You do have a voice.
Yep.
Well, that was a fun discussion. Thank you for participating. So we're going to take a quick break. But before that, we just want to let you know that the Neutral Zone Hotel will be moving into summer mode following this episode. So we're going to try to put something out every 2 weeks. It's probably not going to be hockey current events related. We've got a couple ideas that we want to hit up, so we encourage you to check it out. We anticipate coming back full time once training camps are in full swing, and we're moving probably not right at the beginning of the preseason, but we've moved pretty heavily into the preseason. We want to thank everybody who's been along for the ride. We've had a lot of fun doing this, and we're looking forward to coming back for another season.
Yes, big thanks to everyone who has listened to us during this very first season. We love you. Our best fans.
Not you, though. You know who you are.
Well, we'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, this is John here with a public service announcement. The name of the band is Eagles. It's not the Eagles, no matter what the dude told you. It's actually just Eagles. Why are we bringing this up now? No reason. No reason at all.
Hi, we're back. We're going to talk about some fun stuff, although I've penciled in some more bad stuff. But we'll talk about some fun stuff to start.
Woohoo!
So the NHL held the 2024 entry draft on Friday night and Saturday day at Sphere. If there's anything I learned watching the draft, it is that it's not the Sphere, it is Sphere. And if you say the Sphere, you have to immediately correct yourself. It's just called Sphere. Why? I don't know. But it did look visually impressive. Looked like everybody except for Barry Trotz was having a great time. And yeah, like they should just hold it there every year because it was incredible from a technical perspective to watch. Congratulations to Macklin Celebrini, who went first overall to the San Jose Sharks. And congratulations to everyone who got drafted, because it is an achievement. Not everyone's going to make the dance, but even getting your name called on draft day, I think, is pretty special. SJ, do you want to maybe give me one or two winners that you have down for the NHL's entry draft?
So I thought San Jose had a great draft, not just with the first pick in Macklin Celebrini, but in their lower picks as well. They also got... These guys' names keep flying out of my head is the problem here. Oh, they also managed to get Sam Dickinson with the 11th overall pick, who is one of the better defenders in the draft. I honestly think they could have done even better by taking Ziv Biyum, who was picked just after Dickinson. But I am also not a prospect expert. So if they thought Dickinson was a better bet, then who am I to say otherwise? I would also like to call out that with the 33rd overall pick, they took Igor Chernyshov, who was widely expected to go in the first round, but he managed to sunburn himself right into the second round, which I feel a bit bad for him, but San Jose is certainly going to reap the benefit of that. And if you haven't heard the sunburn story, it's a little funny. So basically, he got a sunburn, a massive sunburn, right before Dan Milstein's camp. And this is a Russian kid. So like none of the NHL people had seen him play in person this year. And Dan Milstein's camp was going to be basically their introduction to him. He was so badly sunburned, he could not put on any of his gear, and he couldn't skate at the camp. Right out of the first round for that, which, is sad. But yeah, they did. I think they had a great draft all overall and made lots of picks, and some of those guys are going to turn into something. So Greer has done a good job of setting them up for the future.
Just to add a bit on that, the 11th overall pick, they traded up to get. They bundled the 14th pick and some of their later picks in order to move up. That did put them in the position, with some help by some teams we'll mention later, to pick one of these top-tier defensive prospects, the guy who looks poised to be a number one NHL defender. There were 5 of those guys within the top 12. And that trade up allowed them to get one of them. So another nice piece of work by Greer.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Mike Greer's work as a GM so far in the tear down and the rebuild. I like his signings, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I agree, San Jose had a fantastic night. Alex, do you have a winner that you want to talk about?
Sure. We kind of mentioned it already. The Wild, at least on day one, had lucked into a great pick with the number 12 pick. They got Ziv Biyum, who, one of the top tier defensemen. It was pretty lucky for them that he was available at 12, and they took advantage. They got the best player available there.
And they traded up to do it. They traded up one pick to ensure themselves of that, which made me laugh, but totally worth it.
Such a fun thing. The other guy who the other team where it's you lucked into the best available player that should have been taken before, the New York Islanders took Cole Eiserman, who is not exactly the type of player that you think of when you think of the New York Islanders, but he's a exciting guy who should score a lot of goals for them in the future.
Yeah, he came into the year with people talking about him being a top 5 pick, and his draft stock really plummeted, eventually got taken at 20 because he is considered to be defensively extremely suspect. He's very much kind of a pure goal scorer kind of player, and people are not sure it's going to translate. But I think it's a great bet to take at pick 20. So good job by Lou.
Cole Eiserman? could be Lou's great grandson. Not from a physical perspective, just from like, that's how damn old Lou is. Lou has been in this league longer than Cole Eiserman's parents have been alive. I'm going to shout out the Montreal Canadiens, who I think had a fantastic, sure, but also I think they had a fantastic draft. Ivan Demidov slipped from possibly 2nd to 5th. Montreal was very confident going in to get them. Montreal has a scouting operation in Russia, unlike most teams. Their head scout is Russian Canadian, Bobrov. He is very active in the Russian scene. They were very confident that Demidov was the best player who was going to be available, knowing Celebrini was going first overall, and they were able to get him. Montreal also traded up to get the 21st overall pick and took Michael Haig, who does look like he is going to be a middle six center in the NHL, which is something that Montreal desperately needs, especially if he's got 1C upside. Haig had an extremely bad last year. His dad died tragically, drowned in their pool.
Oh.
And that deeply impacted his ability to play hockey as a young man. And he probably fell a few picks as a result. So hopefully in the Canadiens organization, and as he, has matured a little bit, we're going to see some growth there. But yeah, overall, big fan of Montreal's draft. They didn't get as much deeper just because they had to use some picks to move up. But I think when you're grabbing the consensus number 2 at 5 and somebody who was ranked in the mid-teens at 21, you're doing okay.
I wouldn't call him the consensus number 2. Honestly, I think Artem Levshunov was the consensus number 2.
According to the Athletics final rankings, Demidov was the consensus number 2.
Well, I don't think the Athletics final rankings are correct, because literally every single person I saw mock anything said Chicago was going to take Levshunov.
Okay, well, they had the 2.5 then. I'm still happy.
It's still a great pick. And also, the Ducks taking Seneke at 3rd was very funny. And we should probably talk about it.
It's a bit of a stretch, and if it works out, they're going to look great, but I worry.
I think Verbeek just kind of does what he wants. And I applaud him for it. He doesn't seem completely swayed by the consensus.
The Ducks and the Seattle Kraken were the two teams that seemed the Kraken maybe not as much with who they selected, but more what they selected. Opened up the opportunity for like the Sharks and the Wild to get some really good players. Same with the we'll probably talk about them more in a bit. The Utah Hockey Club taking Tigaglina. That's probably a bit of a reach at 6.
Yeah.
You couldn't have said that more wrong.
Yes, I know. I realized immediately after it came out of my mouth, like, oh, that is not how I say that at all.
Tej Iginla. You even mispronounced Iginla, and he played for the Penguins.
Did he, though? Did he?
Well, not for very long.
Did he?
Alex is pressing X for doubt.
He did play for the Penguins. It was just remarkably unproductive. Probably the worst period of his career.
He was traded to the Penguins and the Bruins on the same day, and there was a big deal about it. The Bruins won out. And then he went to the Bruins and was bad, and then signed in Pittsburgh and was bad.
Other way around.
So, was it the other way around?
It was the other way around.
It was the other way around. Sorry. It's tough to keep all this nonsense NHL trade stuff straight. Both teams wear yellow. I can't keep them straight.
Yep. They both wear yellow and black.
Yeah. Carter Yakimchuk, other than having a grade A last name, I thought when Ottawa picked him, I thought to myself, Zane Parik, Zeev Boom, Sam Dickinson, Anton Stileyev are on the board, and you're going for Yakimchuk. He's big, he's strong, but I think he's got a lower floor and a lower ceiling than the 4D who went after him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Zane Parik was the best of that bunch after Levshunov, and I was extremely sad to watch the Kraken pass him up. But having the Kraken take a center in Berkeley Catton at 8 and pass up a defenseman makes a lot more sense after what they did in free agency.
Fair enough.
I do want to say, in regards to Utah Hockey Club, I think that Tej Iginla went too soon.
Mm-hmm.
But it is deeply fucking funny because, I mean, that's instant rivalry with Calgary, and I was pulling for somebody to do it, so I'm glad Utah did. I also want to point out that Utah pulled off a couple really important trades during the second day of the draft, acquiring Mikhail Sergachev from the Lightning for the signing rights to J.J. Moser, second round pick next year, seventh round pick this year, and most importantly, Connor Geekie, who is a really good prospect. They also acquired John Marino from the Devils for their second round pick, who became Mikhail Yegorov, and a second round pick next year. So they, on top of signing Sean Durzi to a fairly reasonable contract, they've really shored up their defense in Utah. Can you shore up defense that didn't exist last year because it was in a completely different state? I don't know. But you got to think that this is going to make Utah a lot tougher to play against.
Yeah, I think that Utah has done what they need to do on the back end to make themselves a playoff team this year.
Yep.
The other team I want to talk about are the Vegas Golden Knights. So the Golden Knights moved out Logan Thompson and then made him come to Sphere to do a signing session after he was traded, which is very funny.
I don't think they forced him at gunpoint, but it was the fact that he was traded while he was signing autographs was extremely funny. And also kudos to him and to all of the Vegas fans who basically were like, oh, he's leaving. I am going to go line up and say goodbye.
So Sean Gentili did do some reporting, talked with Thompson a bit. He did find out before coming in. They did do the courtesy of letting him know at like 9 o'clock versus when he was scheduled to come in at 12. So he did know coming in. So it wasn't that brutal, but it was still an extremely funny occurrence. And just a weird trade from Vegas's perspective. Logan Thompson is not a guy that I really felt like they needed to move on from. He's a guy who is cost controlled for a while. He's a good backup. He's a good insurance plan.
He makes less than league minimum. He makes less than league minimum right now. And he's a good backup. The move did not make any sense. And
there was a second trade that they made later when they got Holtz from the New Jersey Devils that they also got Akira Schmid with, but they didn't qualify offer Schmid, which that doesn't mean he's not going to be part of the Vegas organization going forward because they could still sign him to a deal. But it does mean that they went into the first day of free agency with an unclear idea of who is going to be behind Adin Hill.
They signed a goalie in free agency. They paid him $1.8 million. Do you know who that is?
No.
Ilya Samsonov. Ilya Samsonov, who is worse and less reliable than Logan Thompson, who they moved out for nothing.
The only thing I can think of why they moved Logan Thompson was they wanted to make the contracts right so they could acquire 2 contracts from New Jersey. It's pretty clear that New Jersey wanted to move 2 players, and I believe the Knights were at 50 beforehand, so they would have had to move a player. I don't know why they dumped Thompson, but it could be that they just thought 2 third-round picks were more valuable than someone who is only going to be with the organization for 1 more year. And I agree with you that I think Logan Thompson's a better goaltender. And I think it's a great move for the Capitals to get him.
Yep.
But I think for the Golden Knights, all of this was all about acquiring Alexander Holtz.
Yes.
Who underperformed in New Jersey defensively, wasn't working in their system. And I really think that Cassidy is going to take a guy like Holtz, who has shades of other highly offensive wingers that Cassidy has gotten the best out of. And I think he has a chance to turn him into the 20 or 30 goal upside guy. And right now, one of the things the Knights needs is someone who can score, secondary scoring, because they just let go of Jonathan Marchessault. They dumped Riley Smith last year. So they are missing secondary scoring.
Yeah.
So I think that's all this was. I think they said, okay, we can probably get close to Thompson in free agency, but Holtz we think is an underused talent who's going to fit well in our system.
Yeah, Lindy Ruff seemed to have just hated Holtz. New Jersey badly misused him.
I hope this works out better for the Vegas Golden Knights than the last time they went for a young upside play with pedigree, which was when they traded for Nolan Patrick, who
got a concussion.
Too badly injured to continue playing.
Yeah, unfortunately, Nolan Patrick, the writing was already on the wall for his career. And I think the Knights, I don't believe, paid anything for him. In this case, they paid... The net result is that they have Holtz, third-round pick for Paul Cotter and Logan Thompson.
Yep.
And I don't know who Paul Cotter is. So
depth guy.
Yeah.
A third-line winger. Do we want to talk about the other move that the Vegas Golden Knights made on draft day, day one?
Now is the time.
So, speaking of bad actors in our sport, at 19th overall, the Vegas Golden Knights drafted from Tri-City in the USHL, Trevor Connolly. So Connolly, probably on skill, could have broken into the top 10. However, 2 years ago, he posted a video on Snapchat, that ever reliable piece, of a friend posing in front of a swastika made out of children's blocks that he captioned "Creations." He has apologized. He was also, according to The Athletic, there was an accusation of having thrown a racial slur during a game, but they could not corroborate that, so there was no suspension at the time. So in this case, we have a young guy coming in who definitely has a bad act, and possibly two.
There's a couple of other questionable things, allegations and stuff about just being a bad teammate and such. One red flag that I will note before we get into other stuff is that the guy played for 4 different junior teams, developmental teams over 4 years. Which is something that you don't see, because you leave a team for a reason.
I thought it was meaningful that the Vegas Golden Knights didn't allow him to do the post-draft interview. Usually, for all the first round picks, they go up, they get drafted, they take some pictures, and then they do live on camera interviews with ESPN and Sportsnet. And I was watching the ESPN feed, and who sits down on the little couch next to Leah Hextall? Well, it wasn't Trevor Connolly. It was the GM of the Vegas Golden Knights, who said that they had lots of great conversations with Trevor, and everything's going to be just fine. And when Leah asked him what was said in those interviews, he said, well, we couldn't possibly disclose that.
It was an extremely shady answer for a question that you've got plenty of outs for how to answer. It was something that McCrimmon was clearly not prepared to answer, why they felt like they could take him with the character issues. And there's definitely answers that you can give that are Like, you feel like he impressed us with what with his understanding of why he did what he did was wrong. And we're confident that working together, he could be a bit better person within our franchise, stuff like that. We're confident in our team's leadership, yada, yada, yada. It was a question that he was not prepared to answer at all.
Yeah, it was gross. I thought that the interview was gross, and I thought it showed that they really don't actually have any kind of confidence in this player. And I also think it's notable that very few Vegas draft picks actually go on to ever play for the team. They probably don't really consider this player to be part of the future of their organization. So why would they even bother to do that kind of due diligence?
So I have two thoughts, and the first. And one thing I want to clarify is that McCrimmon did say that Connolly had done diversity training and had done some community work, but that's pretty broad. Diversity training could be he watched a 25-minute video from the 90s on VHS about why you shouldn't say mean words to your coworkers and slap the women on the ass as they walk by, right? Like we all remember those from your high school jobs and stuff. So my two thoughts are, one, you're absolutely right. They probably don't consider this person part of their long-term grouping, but almost certainly he will be. Most teams will not want to take a player with this level of baggage on. Montreal's found that with Logan Mailloux. They probably can't trade him until they can prove that he's, prove publicly that he's, improved as a person. So I think that what I find interesting about it is that the Golden Knights may not have thought about that if their plan is to use this player to recoup assets down the road. He is damaged goods, and damaged goods that he fell quite a long way in the draft. Yep. So from a hockey perspective, there's a lot of questions there. You're not going to be able to move him to a market that cares. So I guess he could become a Columbus Blue Jacket down the road. But other than that, maybe a New York Ranger. They don't care about or you know what? He's going to be an Edmonton Oiler. But
he's going to be an Edmonton Oiler.
But in all seriousness, like, most likely they're going to have to commit to this player, whether or not they intended to. But the second piece I want to say is that he is a kid. So maybe he did learn something, and maybe he has thought about his actions. I don't necessarily think that we have to get a big demonstration from him that he has. All we need is for him to not do more racism. So the thing that Tony DeAngelo did when he came into the league, don't do that.
Yeah, I think that I would be so much less concerned about this if he had actually done the interview and been asked a question and then had an answer where basically he said, hey, it was wrong, and I understand that now, and I made a mistake, and I'm sorry, and I'm gonna do better in the future. Like, literally, I guess that's all I wanted.
Yeah, and I think the team protected him from that on draft day. And
yeah, I'm much angrier at McCrimmon than I am at this kid who I know nothing about.
Hopefully what ends up happening is down the road he talks to people about it.
Yeah.
And again, Logan Mailloux is not a direct comparable, because I think what Mailloux did was worse.
Yeah.
With an actual victim. And also deserves a different level of grace, because that's he was a legal thing as a child. There's some stuff there that, legally we shouldn't be peering into. But he's talked to reporters, and he said some dumb shit the first time he did. Like, let's be clear. The first time he spoke to anybody, he did not speak well, and did not seem to understand. But the last time the Montreal let him get in front of he was pretty, straight up on understanding that he made a mistake. And then he was going to try to get better, and talked a little bit about what the future might be for that. So he's also an 18-year-old kid who just got drafted. I don't like McCrimmon doing it the way he did. I don't like how unprepared he was for the obvious questions he was going to get. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, like, hopefully this guy, it's one blip in his life that came from being an edgy teenager with access to the internet.
Yeah. Before we move on from the draft stuff, there is one last thing I want to call out. Celine Dion did the Ivan Demidov announcement for the Montreal Canadiens. And it was very fun. I don't know. I it was cheesy, I guess, but I don't know. I liked it. And then I heard that Jeff Merrick on Sportsnet did ask Demidov if he knew who Celine Dion was, and he did. Good on him.
Yeah, Celine Dion rocks. Obviously, as a Montrealer, a lifelong fan of the Montreal Canadiens, and she lives in Las Vegas. So it's an easy thing for the Habs to do to reach out and involve her. It makes a big night bigger. And yeah, Ivan Demidov in his post-draft interview was so charismatic too, because they asked him, because he'd been learning English, and his English, it's not like the best, but he's a lot further along than like Malkin was when he came over, for example. Mm-hmm. And he said, it was just pretty funny. He's like, I spent a year and a half, I learned English. Maybe I should have learned French. Which, you know what? That's the kind of thing you want to say to the Montreal market that's going to get you some points.
Yep.
Nick Suzuki is probably never going to be fully fluent in French, but everyone knows he's taking French classes in Montreal, and it earns him points, right?
Yeah,
I am so excited about Demidov. For the first time in a long time. Like, this is the first pick since Cole Caulfield that I've been over the moon about. But no offense to our small goals boy, Demidov is on a higher platform because of the potential.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of small goals boy, the Pittsburgh Penguins, because they traded away their first this year, did not do much this draft. They had a couple of second rounders, took appropriate prospects at that point. The pick of theirs that I'm probably most excited about actually came in round 7, where they took Max Swanson, who is a small goals boy. He is one of the best players from the USHL this year, won a championship, but he is a tiny, tiny man. He is a tiny, tiny goals boy. So if he develops along the lines of, say, that Jake Getzel did, where he grows a little bit, continues being someone who can score goals, he's going to be a real fun player. Or he fizzles out and he's a typical 7th rounder. But it's a fun lottery pick, and it's that is the pick that I'm most excited about from this draft.
Hey, why not? Good luck with your small goals, boy. I'm
excited that the Kraken took Julius Miettinen in the 2nd round, because he's an Everett Silvertip. So I've watched him play in person quite a lot, and I'm going to get to watch him again this season. So I get to see that. That'll be cool.
My other favorite pick is Buffalo getting Consta Helenas. That's for you, Tim. I think he's going to be another great addition to that young stable of forwards. Okay, we've talked a lot about the draft, but let's talk about the NHL free agency. So as things stand, they have handed out, and this is not an exaggeration, $415 million of cap hit and almost $1.4 billion in total contract. And we're not even done day 2 of free agency. Just to be clear, if they took the total cap hit that's been added and parceled it out, it would be 4.7 NHL teams worth of cap. It's not an exaggeration to say that this is the craziest free agency ever. There's been so many things done that I've gone, what the hell is happening? There's a few good deals in there. But holy smokes, 190 signings yesterday, 38 so far today, 455 contract years handed out. Let's do winners and losers, because I can't talk about 120 or 200 plus contracts.
Coward. All right.
SJ or Alex, who do you got for a winner?
The first winner I want to go to would be, let's take the obvious one off the board, or at least the most obvious one, the Nashville Predators. are a winner, at least in the short term.
In the very short term.
Yes. One thing that Barry Trotz has proven in the short time he's been a NHL GM is that he loves making a splash, and he is going to make a splash. And the Nashville Predators did that. They got 3 of the top 5 free agents, at least according to TSN, on the day, with Steven Stamkos, with Jonathan Marchessault, and then with Brady Shea. Of those, they're big money deals. Stamkos is 8x4. Shea is 7x6, and then Marchessault is 5x4. I like the additions of Stamkos and Marchessault. I think that provides more offensive bump, even if you're buying aging players. It's a cool thing that you're getting them. I think I said this in the winters, but I think that Shea contract might turn bad sooner rather than later. But I think the offensive additions make it worth it.
The Nashville Predators got so old all at once, ancient. Like I totally misunderstood what Trotz's plan was for the Preds, and like coming out of their playoff run, and I was shocked that this is how he decided to spend his money. I would have understood taking either Marchessault or Stamkos, but to do both of them and to give them so much money, and they are so old. I have zero opinion on Brady Shea. As far as I'm concerned, I know nothing about that player.
Good defenseman, but also old.
He's the youngest of the 3 big players at 30, but I also think that contract is the most likely to age terribly. The other thing that they did, not on free agency day, but the bit before it, was they locked up Saros.
They did.
So they're committing to this core, and they're giving Andrew Brunette the type of tools that he seems to naturally want as a coach: puck movers and goal scorers. So I come from a world where the Nashville Predators have been a defense-first, Barry Trotz coached team. Hard-nosed, tough to play against. We get one guy who can score goals, and that's about it. And now all of a sudden, Barry Trotz as a GM has gone, to hell with everything I did as a coach. Andrew Brunette, let's go out there and score a shit ton of goals. The Predators might be really fun to watch next year. The wheels are probably going to come off 3 or 4 years down the road. But hey, let's go for it. And
I think they have 2 good years. I think they're going to have 2 really fun years. And if they can convert, if they can get a cup in the next 2 years, it's all worth it. But I think the chances are good that doesn't happen, and then they are screwed. But it'll be a fun ride for
I don't even know how screwed they're going to be. With the cap going up $8 million by then, at least. They might be able to find a sucker. They might be able to, the Stamkos deal's not going to be on there for much longer. I don't know.
I mean, they've got 4 more years of Yossi, 4 more years of Stamkos, 7 years, I think, of Forsberg. He's only 29. 3 years of Ryan O'Reilly. Yeah, I don't know. They've got Saros signed for the next 8 years. He's 29. And who knows with goaltending how he's going to do as he ages. It's going to be interesting.
We'll see.
Yep, we will.
Who else do you have as a winner? SJ.
Who else do I have as a winner? I think I kind of want to do losers.
We'll get to losers, but you got to do winners first.
Okay, I think the Florida Panthers are a winner in free agency. They signed Sam Reinhart right before free agency opened, so I'm going to count it. He signed to a very reasonable 8-year deal, $8.8 625, came in significantly. That comes in significantly under Matthew Tkachuk. Great deal. And they did not become enamored of some of the folks that they really do need to let walk from that. Guys like Brandon Montour. They have plenty of money left to sign Anton Lundell. I think they had a really smart free agency, and they have started filling out their the guys that the defenders that they let walk. They signed Nate Schmidt today. Just really smart. They let Lomberg. They pretty much let their whole fourth line walk. And all of those guys have now gone on to other deals where they are overpaid. The fourth line, I watched those teams. They were not good. Like they were not a championship fourth line. That was a 3-line team. And then anytime that fourth line was on the ice, they were gritting their teeth and praying. So like Lomberg signing in Calgary, that's great for him. Stenlin got a contract and so on, but they didn't fall in love with those guys, and they were right not to do so. And now they're replacing them with extremely affordable contracts, minimum contracts in AJ Greer, Jesper Boquist, Mackenzie Entwistle, Thomas Nosek.
It's tough to argue. I think they got the best player, or one of the best two players available in Reinhart. Mm-hmm. And I think they made the smart decisions that'll keep them competitive. I think they also got pretty lucky getting Nate Schmidt. I think he's going to be great for them at $900K. Yeah.
800.
Good luck. 800. Jeez. That's a whole 100 less.
Yeah.
I'll take it, though, Florida, if you want to give it to me.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm going to pick my winner as the Sharks. I think when you have $35 million in cap, it's tempting to go out and spend some money. And they did. They spent a few millions. They brought in Tyler Toffoli for 4 years at $6 million.
I love that
and
contract.
Alexander Wenberg for 2 years at $5 million. So they've picked up two solid pros that are going to make them harder, in Wenberg's case, tougher to play against. And in Toffoli's case, going to help them put some goals on the board. Toffoli gets to hang around and show Eklund and Smith and Celebrini how to shoot pucks. Wenberg gets to hang around and show them how to look handsome in front of the camera and be defensively responsible. And both of them are going to end up at some point taking a deal to go out and bring some assets back. Probably not a lot, but a third or something like that. I like what San Jose is doing. Big fan. And bringing in the right players to get to the cap floor, but make this team a tougher team to play against next year. They did a better job than I think Chicago has done.
Yeah.
Are we doing losers now?
SJ wants to talk about losers.
Hold on.
So go ahead, SJ. Get it off your
No,
chest.
go ahead, Alex. Go, Alex.
There's something I want to check before we move on from the Sharks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's entirely possible that this delay has been for nothing, but I just want to check.
Important thing is that we make this as difficult to edit as possible.
Yep.
I'm sorry,
All right,
John.
cool. Just wanted to make sure. We're good.
What was it? Now I got to know.
I want to make sure that they did not do one of the trades to get a guy to bump up their cap a bit more, but they didn't do it over this period.
The only thing that they brought in Jake Wallman.
Oh yeah,
they got paid to take in Jake Wallman, and they picked up Barclay Goodrow off waivers. They probably would have paid to get him like a third or something, but he didn't want to go. It seems like. So they've added. Not like top flight talent, but they've added the type of talent that's going to just make them not get stomped regularly.
Yep.
They got paid to take Jake Wallman.
They apparently, by all accounts, they would have done it for free.
They would have done it for free. Yeah, Sean
Steve
Shapiro
Eisman was just like, "Hey, will you
asked,
take my second round pick and Jake Wallman?" And Mike Greer was like, "I'll have to get back to you on that, Steve." Yeah, I think we can do. You know what? We can do you a favor here. We can do you a solid.
Yep. Yep. Sean Shapiro reported that he heard from inside the Sharks organization that they literally would have just taken him on waivers if he had been waived. So they would have done it for free. Very funny. And yeah, I do. I have a lot of affection for Alex Wenberg. He's a real frustrating player.
You're not the only one.
We're not going to go there. But he can be a really frustrating player to watch. But he will make sure that the kids do not get caved in every night, and he's not going to do a lot else for you. But I think that's pretty valuable when you're trying to build a culture in San Jose.
Yeah, I like I said, I like what they're doing. Macklin Celebrini hasn't committed to going back to university. He might come. If he doesn't come for a year, that's fine. This year can be about getting Will Smith up to speed.
Yep.
I just saw a new signing. Jack Johnson returned home.
Back to Columbus. He's gone full circle.
Good for him.
Beautiful thing.
All right. Losers?
All right, SJ, you want to talk about losers?
Can we
desperately want to talk about losers.
I
Why
mean,
don't you tell us who's a big loser?
Oh, you guys, I'm just so happy about this one. The LA Kings.
Oh,
yeah. The LA Kings, I don't know. I take like a stupid amount of glee in hating the Kings. Like, I don't even actually hate them that much. It's just fun to me to have a team to dump on. And it's important that they be a division rival. And I've decided that's going to be the Kings. And they make it so easy. You guys, they make it so easy. Yeah, so they made some real strange decisions. They moved on from Victor Arvidsson, and they brought in Warren Foegele, which means these two players actually exchanged teams. You're making a face like this is surprising.
His name's Warren Foegele.
Whatever.
that's my bit.
Wait.
Yeah,
We don't
theft,
harp on
SJ.
Alex mispronouncing names.
You do,
absolutely
and I
do.
deserve
I
it,
have
and
done
I
it already.
refuse to change my ways because
Yeah, it's bit theft. You have to pronounce the names correctly, SJ.
Fine.
I'm going to say SJ stands for John Jerry at this rate.
It doesn't even make sense. You can do better. Workshop the joke. All right. So they brought in Warren Foegele. They took Tanner Jeannot off of the Lightning's hands.
For less than 5 picks.
But they still paid like 2, which also confusing. Like, why even take this player? They let Victor Arvidsson walk. They followed up like brilliantly getting rid of PLD by just like making a lot of really mid decisions. And I don't understand what Rob Blake is trying to do. He still has to sign Quentin Byfield. Like, what kind of cap do they have left? They still got like $10 million in cap left, but Quentin Byfield is not going to be a cheap player. Like, if they want to go long with this player, and they absolutely should, he had a really breakout year, they should want to sign him for 8 years, they're going to have to pay him at least $9 million. Like, it should be that high. So I don't understand what they're doing. And I think they've got a little bit of scar tissue from getting beat up by the Oilers for 3 years in a row, honestly.
I think that the Joel Edmondson signing is absolutely ludicrous. I've watched that guy play hockey. He's cooked. He's been cooked for a while.
Yes.
The absolutely desperate for good defenders Leafs wanted nothing to do with him. So
Yeah. The Joel Edmondson signing, probably one of their worst. And I only didn't say anything because I was like struggling to remember his name.
Yeah, that's good. Alex, who do you have down as your loser?
Not sorry. The Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, I understand why you would go there.
So the Seattle Kraken signed maybe the worst contract in the sense that this is the contract with the most red flags and least likely to be successful in Chandler Stevenson's new deal, where it is 7 years of term at $6 million for a guy who was propped up by Mark Stone and doesn't have that crutch anymore.
Excuse me. 6.25. Get it right. Not just 6.
Yes. 6.25. And he's a guy that is 30 and had already started showing signs of decline. It's a rough deal. Also signing Brandon Montour, as we've talked about him as a guy who the Florida Panthers were right to move on from. And I agree. He shores up the Seattle's defense. He is an upgrade over the guys that they would have been icing otherwise. But that contract is just as likely to age badly. And like by the time you get to year 4 of it, it's not going to be pretty. It might be, but not something I'd bet on.
The Brandon Montour signing was one of my favorite parts of watching Free Agent Frenzy on TSN, because they cut to the reaction panel and Craig Button immediately goes, he's going to score a ton of points for them as their number 1 puck moving D. And Mike Johnson kind of went like, actually, that's Vince Dunn. And Cheryl Pounder's trying to she goes, well, he'll enable them to score more points by playing good defense. It was very funny to just watch the entire panel contradict Button, from who said something very dumb.
Yeah. So Montour's contract let's talk about Montour first. Montour's contract comes in a little bit under Vince Dunn. And I do think that is important, because I do think it is Ron saying to Vince Dunn, we are not replacing you with Brandon Montour. One of the problems that the Kraken had in this past season was that Vince Dunn got injured for a significant amount of time. He had a significant concussion, and the Seattle offense basically disappeared for that entire period of time. He was the engine of the team, and when he was not available, the team did not engine. It idled. And I think that is certainly a problem that bears dealing with. I don't hate the Montour signing. I had a bad gut reaction to it, but it's grown on me a bit. He's going to anchor the second pair. He's not going to play with Vince Dunn. And between those two pairs, that will be most of the time on the ice. He'll also take the second power play. He might take the first power play. It depends. The thing about Seattle's power play is that they don't have the kind of showstopper top line forwards that mean you have a true number 1 power play. So it's very possible that there will not be much of a talent differential between PP1 and PP2 anyway. So they'll probably each get a crack at a minute of each power play. So that's fine. He's 30 years old. It's a 7-year contract. He has a full no move in the first 4 years and a modified no trade after that. It is a bonus heavy contract. And basically, when asked about this, Ron Francis basically said, if you want the player, you have to sign these deals now. So basically, he didn't love it. These two contracts are notably the biggest contracts Ron Francis has ever signed in free agency. He had to step out of his comfort zone on this. I think that the hardcore Kraken fans have been screaming for 3 years for Ron to make big swings and take risks and step out of his comfort zone. And like the second he does it, the reaction is, no, wait, not like that. So I don't know. Like on the one hand, I'm like, I don't love it. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, at least he did something. And like I said before, signing Brandon Montour does make the fact that they didn't take Zane Parekh make a lot more sense, because in 2 years, Zane Parekh is going to be in the NHL. And Brandon Montour is going to still have 5 years left on this contract. So between him and Dunn, Parekh would be completely blocked from having a meaningful roster spot for his talent level. The Chandler Stevenson contract is much less forgivable in my eyes. I think it is a negative value contract from day one. It's a bad contract, and I wish they hadn't signed it. I honestly wish they just hadn't done anything about but the forward group needs something, and Francis has basically said in his media availability that he sees Stevenson as being a point generator. When Stevenson was playing with Mark Stone, that was true. He was always, however, a complete defensive liability, and he is going to continue to be a complete defensive liability. I don't trust him to play at center. He is almost certainly going to get an opportunity to be the number 1C on this team until he proves that he is not trustworthy in that role, at which point he will be demoted. I don't know how he really fits in, and I don't understand. I can fully see this contract being bought out quite quickly, basically as soon as Ron gets fired, which will eventually happen because it always does. So
such is the way of life in the NHL.
Such is the way of life in the NHL. This contract also has a full no move in the first 4 years.
Oof.
Yeah. And that's where we are. That's where the Kraken are. I do think undoubtedly the Kraken are a better team today than they were last year. I would like to see them make some more moves, though. I would like to see them move Gord. I would like to see them move Tanev. And we're still waiting on a Beniers and Tolvanen contracts. So that's the Kraken.
That panting you're hearing is not Alex or myself. That is Leif, SJ's dog, who is visible sometimes in the camera right now. And it clearly wants some attention from parent.
John usually does cut out the dog noises, so you don't have to.
Don't cut out the dog noises this time. It was happening while you were speaking. I'm pretty sure it's going to be in there. My loser is the Detroit Red Wings.
Oh,
okay.
Good pick.
The Red Wings moved out a bunch of money and celebrated that by signing Patrick Kane to a bonus-laden deal. They brought in Eric Gustafsson for 2 years at $2.5 million a year for some reason. They brought in Cam Talbot for 2 years for $2.5 million. And then they brought in Jack Campbell. So they didn't really address any positions of need. They re-signed a player that was good for them last year. They still haven't signed Mo Seider or Lucas Raymond to extensions. And they addressed their goaltending by bringing in a 36-year-old guy and a has-been from the Oilers while still having 2 borderline NHL goaltenders on contract. I don't know what Steve Yzerman is doing. This is not how you're going to win a Stanley Cup. It's not making the team meaningfully more competitive. It's just spending $15 million for no reason while moving on from Jake Wallman, a very good middle pairing defender who was reasonably signed.
I don't mind most of the deals that the Red Wings made. The Patrick Kane deal is bonus laden and whatever, but it's also it's a 1-year deal. Eric Gustafsson, the problem is less that they signed him and more the rest of their defensive core outside of Mort Seider, which is a bunch of overpaid, not particularly good guys.
Yeah, Sherrod, Petrie, Oli Mata, Justin Hall. Yeah, like this is it, like that's what I'm saying is you've spent a bunch of money, but you haven't meaningfully addressed your challenges as a team.
Yep. And I'm not sure that the Cam Talbot won't do anything for them.
Neither will Jack Campbell. So yeah, they would be my losers. I would have them after both LA and the Krakens. But I would say that I think they were a pretty big loser on the day. So
I've got 2 more teams that I want to mention that I think I had interesting periods. One I'm going to present as a winner and a loser, and the other one I'm just interested in.
Sure.
Winner, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Loser, the fans of the Tampa Bay Lightning. So to talk about this a little, Tampa Bay had maybe the most interesting draft to free agent day period. They started off on the second day of the draft by trading Sergachev, which we've mentioned before. That got them a good prospect, a promising young defenseman, or the RFA rights to a promising young defenseman in Moser. And then it freed up a bunch of cap space for them to do something interesting with, and that they did. And they got maybe the biggest name of free agency, which, as much as I love the player, is a mark against this free agency period, and really any July 1st free agency period, in Jake Getzel. Signed him to a big money deal for 7 years. Hold 7 by $9 million. Full no movement clause for the beginning portion of the contract. And then the second half of that is that they, of course, let Steven Stamkos walk, the longtime captain of the franchise, arguably the best player in franchise history, at least at this point in his career, depending on how you feel about like how Kucherov projects out for the rest of his career, how you feel about Martin St. Louis, but certainly a player with that case. And it's a gut punch for the Tampa Bay Lightning fans. But I kind of think this is something that you've been talking about, Benjamin, where Julian Brisebois is acting more like Vegas here, where they're I know. I cannot pronounce words and names just in general.
Brisebois.
Where Brisebois is taking from the Vegas model, where he is looking at this very coldly, not getting emotionally attached. And he has made the decision where Victor Hedman is more important for the team's future than Steven Stamkos. And he then, pretty soon into this period, signed Hedman to the exact same extension that Stamkos got. 4 years by $8 million that kicks in starting next offseason. All in all, Tampa Bay exits this week in a better position to contend moving forward, but in a way that made a lot of their fans unhappy.
Yep.
Tampa's always been this team.
Yes.
It's just that they haven't had this decision point with a player of magnitude. They've let a lot of fan favorites go. Stamkos was the first time, and then Hedman would have been the second time that they had a real big fan favorite, and they made their decision.
Sergachev being the guy moved out to make cap space for future flexibility made extending Hedman so much more important.
SJ?
Can I call out a couple of signings that I just thought were fun?
Yes.
All right, cool. Chris Driedger is signing back with the Florida Panthers. I'm so happy for him. He was really successful in Florida. Playing there is what got him a big contract with Seattle in the first place. That contract was an unmitigated disaster, but I'm really happy that he's going back to a place where he was successful and he can get an NHL job. I don't know how that's going to stack up because Spencer Knight and Sergei Bobrovsky are still there. Maybe he's going to be a number 3 guy. I don't know, but he's on a one-way contract, and I'm really happy for him on that. I would also just like to note that Matthew Joseph and P.O. Joseph are now playing together on the St. Louis Blues. Matthew Joseph was traded there, and P.O. Joseph signed there, and I think that's fun that they're brothers and they get to play together next year. Also, I would like to call out that Sean Monahan has been reunited with bestie Johnny Gaudreau in Columbus.
And that was celebrated immediately from a Twitter post from Boring Sean Monahan, a top 10 hockey Twitter account of all time, which I think confirms that Johnny Gaudreau is the brains behind Boring Sean Monahan. Excellent Twitter account. Highly recommended.
Cool. I would never recommend Twitter.
But, it is what it is.
Yes, I would also like to celebrate Tomas Tatar getting a $1.8 million contract in New Jersey in this 2024. How did this happen?
Hey, good luck.
Good for you. Good for you. Okay, that's it. That's what I got.
All right, and
I said
go ahead, Alex. No, you go.
I said I had a second team that I wanted to bring up, as I think I had a really interesting one. And that's the Washington Capitals. They didn't do much in terms of like big signings, but they had a lot of interesting trades where they traded for Mangiapane. They traded for Jacob Chikrin. And they, of course, traded for Logan Thompson. They are going all in on the on trying to be competitive and trying to continue to be competitive. And I think they did a pretty decent job of having a roster that can contend for that bottom half of the Metro, at least if Pierre-Luc Dubois comes closer to his ceiling than the floor. And that's a big if. I just wanted to, as much as it hurts me, I want to give my compliments to Brian McClellan because I think he did a good job this week or so.
I don't think it's what they should be doing, but if the order is to get competitive, they did the things they need to try to stretch the window.
Yep.
Edmonton Oilers, congratulations on having a second line. Jeff Skinner has never played in the playoffs in his major junior or NHL career. He's probably going to get to now. And Victor Arvidsson's a good fit. So hopefully that convinces Leon Draisaitl to stick around.
Yep. I hope Leon leaves.
Yeah, well, I meant from the Edmonton Oilers perspective, not necessarily from ours. And yeah, anything else anybody wants to add?
No.
All right.
Have a great summer, everyone.
I'm gonna end up by congratulating Brad Richards, Vincent Lecavalier, Ilya Brizgalov, Christian Ehrhoff, and Rick DiPietro for their compliance buyout July 1st payments. Always great to see that teams are still paying for mistakes they made literally a decade ago, and in DiPietro's case, will be for some significant time. So, yeah.
I do have a quick question before we leave for you, Benjamin.
Sure.
Maybe not in terms of insanity, but in terms of lasting bad impacts. Which do you think will have more teams regretting? This free agency period or 2016?
I feel like more bad signings were made in 2016 as a percentage of the total signings. There's just a lot less 7-year deals out there right now. There's definitely some of these that have the potential to go bad and quick. But 2016, I think just every deal that was signed that was more than 3 years long was bad, pretty much. At least this one will have Gensel and Reinhardt. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that. But it's a question I wanted to ask before this was done.
I guess we'll see. All right. Yeah, so that's going to do it for us. Yeah, thanks everybody for listening. And I hope everybody has a great summer out there. Does anybody else want to say anything nice to the nice people?
No.
I already said it.
Yeah, I know.
We love you.
Yay. And yeah, we'll try to be back in about 2 weeks with something interesting. I'm on vacation for a month, so I'll leave it up to some of these people. But yeah, we'll bring you some fun stuff over the summer. And we really hope that you have a great time. But we are looking forward to the 2024, 2025 NHL season already. And until then, this has been the Neutral Zone Hotel, which is written, hosted, and produced by the Neutral Zone Hotel crew, 3/5 of whom are on the pod today. You can hit us up at neutralzonehotel.com. You can join our Discord, neutralzonehotel.com/Discord. Follow us on Instagram, Blue Sky, or YouTube at Neutral Zone Hotel. As always, I want to thank our friend Emily Mowbray for the fantastic logo. And if you're listening on a podcast player, give us 5 stars or a thumbs up if you're on YouTube. Hit the like button, subscribe, and it really helps us out. We would love to grow and build this into a bigger podcast as we go. So just thanks so much for your time, and everybody have a great summer.